This is an RNZ podcast.
It's time for Mr. Midweek Mediawatch himself, because it is Midweek Mediawatch o'clock. Colin Peacock, kia ora to you. Lovely to have you in, as always.
Hi there. I'm just wondering, are you in a bit of a funny mood tonight? Because when I
always
tuned in earlier,
mood.
I heard you slapping down Wallace.
Did I?
He was describing music in cafes as, I think, oral ambience, and you thought that was too wordy.
It was just disgraceful.
Well, then a few minutes later, you said people who texted in to agree with him, you described them as something like wretched misanthropic or something like that. You were bringing in the big words. So big words are okay or not on your show?
Nah, big words are okay. It was the phrasing of it.
Okay.
Yeah, because he said something like a positive oral experience.
Ambience. Oral ambience.
Positive oral ambience or something. And I called him Deloitte Chapman because it sounded sounded like he was using consultant speak.
Right.
Yeah, that's
on his own
all.
show, which he's probably entitled to do. But
That's true.
just an observation.
You know, it's kind of you got to keep Wallace humble.
I just want to know what you're expecting from this lot, and and supply the words appropriately.
I'm expecting joy and happiness, as I always am from Midweek Mediawatch, Colin Peacock. Let's get going, shall we?
Let's.
You want to start with speaking of joy and happiness, you want to start with a story that startled you this morning on the radio?
Yeah, do you remember a while back you were talking to Hayden Donnell on a Midweek Media Watch, and he was saying he couldn't sit through a weather forecast. If he wanted to know the weather, he'd already tuned out, and by the time it was all over, he'd forgotten to listen to the bit he needed to hear. I'm a bit like that with the traffic, because it's just not relevant to me. But I did catch this on News Talk ZB this morning about 7:10. I wasn't quite sure that I'd heard it properly, so I had to go back and check. Here it is.
On the southern motorway, moderate to heavy in patches coming in from Drury. Now, we've got some runaway chickens just prior to East Tāmaki. If you can update us further, 0800 jammed, the northwestern heavy but moving from Hobsonville.
Some runaway
Chickens.
And runaway chickens.
There were no further updates at all. It was just not mentioned in any other. I went all the way through the Mike Hosking breakfast, checking all the time saver traffic updates, and nothing. Went online, when I googled chickens Tāmaki, I just got a whole load of listings for takeaway shops.
So what happened to the runaway chickens?
Don't know, but is this normal? Maybe this is normal. Clearly not remarkable enough to actually be followed up on, or for any kind of news story to be created.
If anyone, what was the area again, Colin?
Tāmaki, I think she said.
Tāmaki, okay. If anyone has any updates on the runaway chickens and their welfare or otherwise, please do text it through. 21001 is the number.
Yeah, why did those chickens cross the road? I suppose is what we really want to know.
Oh dear. All right. Let's talk about a really sad event actually on Tuesday, the funeral of the Field family children.
Yeah. So I wonder whether this was a bit of a first, because the funeral was held 11 o'clock. Crossroads Church in Palmerston North, and the funeral was live streamed, which is relatively common now. Some families, allow this in funeral homes, facilitate it, and churches. But this one was actually live streamed on the sites of Stuff and the New Zealand Herald, and there was a note, for example, on the Herald. I can't recall how Stuff actually phrased it, and the page isn't online for me to check back, but the Herald said the family has shared a link to the funeral for the children who died in the fire with media. So something the family clearly on side with this. They also put a stream on YouTube as well. So the family had clearly decided to be as sort of open as possible. But I was thinking this really must be a first. We've had prominent New Zealanders like Sir Edmund Hillary's funeral, I think, was streamed and covered by media. Things like the services after the mosque attacks 2019, they were, of course, like a big national event that were covered by the media. But, I mean, this really was just a family funeral, and it felt very strange to be looking at, or to me anyway, on news websites.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess this would only have happened with the consent of the family, presumably.
Yes, in fact, there was a note saying on the YouTube feed saying whether you will be joining us in person via the live stream or in prayer on Tuesday to celebrate their lives. We want everyone to wear bright, cheerful colours. Wherever you are in the world, let's make the day as full of light as they were. So this is, clearly a family decision. So RNZ didn't carry a live feed of it, but on Checkpoint, there, Jimmy Ellingham, the reporter there, did a very nice package where obviously taken bits of the audio from the service, put it together in a more traditional way. But it just did feel quite strange. I tuned in, this is during the speech by the school principal at the Mount Big School where the three field children, or two of the field children went. It's Kyle Harris.
As we talked about your beautiful boys and shared stories from the classroom and playground, they brought us so much joy through their learning, their achievements, their antics, their cheeky smiles, their spirit, and their incredible kindness. We were and are so proud of them.
Yeah,
Oh, man.
really. I mean, it was a great speech. I mean, everyone absolutely held it together that I saw. It was remarkably composed, very well handled event. But to me, it really felt odd watching it on a news website. And
Did
also,
it feel like you were intruding on someone's...
Yes, absolutely
Right.
that. Because also when I first looked at the stream, it was doing the part of it where the family photo, the photos of the children, still images are coming up before the kind of live camera footage of people giving their speeches, the relatives and friends and so on, and Kyle Harris, the principal. But, then again, there's another angle to it, which is, police are still investigating this as a homicide. And when I went on the YouTube feed, I thought, I wonder how people are actually reacting. But the comments that people made, because, YouTube comments can be unpredictable, let's put it that way. But no, they were all just messages of support and love and so on. Nothing nasty there, but it did feel unusual.
I guess, the family clearly gave their consent to news media to stream, to live stream the funeral, but the news media have a decision as to whether they to take that or not. Do you think it was the right call from those publications that did to stream it?
I guess it does no harm. It just felt unusual. I mean, it's all up to the family, right? And that was their decision. And in fact, I think no official statement for some days after the tragedy. Then on Friday, Chelsea Field, a statement came out on behalf of her that was very strong, very quotable. That led the news. One News at 6, for example, led with it, pretty much reading it out verbatim. So that they've clearly had a kind of strategy for getting their message out, and including the media in that. And there was a funeral for a journalist a while back, which was live streamed, and I watched and again felt that feeling of like, if I was there, it would feel normal, but watching it on a computer feels strange. And as things were being said, I thought, that'd be a great piece of audio to put in a Mediawatch as a tribute to this person. But then you're thinking, hang on, like this is not meant to be broadcast. This is a family event.
Well, I think watching a live stream of a funeral of someone that you know, it is an odd experience. It is a... it's great that you're able to do it because it allows you to be there in a manner of speaking. But I have limited experience with this, but I do have experience with this, and I think it's an inherently strange thing to witness the live streaming of a funeral. Do you know what I mean? Yeah,
it feels like that to me too. But just to be clear, no criticism of the family here.
Exactly,
it's their choice. No criticism of those two organisations for, facilitating the family's wishes of bringing it to a wider audience. And as I was saying, people around the world might be able to see it, whereas they might not otherwise be able to. So that's fine. It just felt a little strange because I couldn't think of where there'd just been an outright tragedy like that that people were interested in, and I just wondered quite what some people got out of watching it. But on the other hand, if there's people that feel attached to that region and those towns, like Fielding, Sanson, and wanted to be able to see it, it enabled them to do it, then that's fine.
Let's talk about newspapers and indeed digital written news more broadly. Some interesting numbers from Nielsen about who's reading the papers, Colin.
Yes, these days they don't do what they used to do, those Audit Bureau of Circulation things were really hard, figures for sales, income, revenue, units being sold. So now it's kind of readership. But Stuff put out a statement when Nielsen released its latest top-line report, as they call it, saying 26% growth year on year. This is a 3-month period, so comparing it with 3 months, 12 months, the same 3 months a year before, 26% growth year on year with digital and print combined. So these are their metropolitan titles like the Post, the Press and Waikato Times, they say, now being read by 1.5 million Kiwis each month. So it's that monthly figure, which I guess allows them to beef up the reach of those titles a bit if it's monthly. Digital subscriptions, they say, to the daily publications up 57%. Now, this is important for them because, remember, they have instituted this paywall policy for those 3 titles.
That's right.
And this is something the New Zealand Herald, which is, not as national, I guess, and widespread, still regarded as a kind of top of the North Island thing, although, of course, it's a national news service as well. I think the stuff company would see this as a kind of vindication of its strategy.
Digital subscriptions up 57%. That's big. That's something to be, that's really good news for that company.
Well, yeah, but they would have been quite new, I guess, a year ago.
Well,
I
they would have
suppose
been newish. I think they launched they launched the paywalls when I was working for Stuff. So that would have been when would that have been?
I can't recall off the
I
top
think it
of
was
my
probably
head.
mid 2023. I want to say mid 2023. There or thereabouts.
Sounds right.
Yeah.
But they're also pointing to the press, saying that's really gone up. 150,000 readers have been added, so 900,000 people, they say, engaging with it every month, 20% more than the same quarter in 2024. The Post, Gavin Ellis, the former Herald editor who writes a weekly column, his column yesterday, he notes that the Post has gone up as the Herald has dropped a little bit. Remember, part of the strategy with the Post was to make it a kind of a national focus, national politics, business and so on, not just, the daily paper of Wellington as had previously been seen. And they appointed Steve Kilgallen as a kind of specialist investigations editor in Auckland, or editor and a senior editorial team. So, they'll be really, really pleased.
The Herald won't like that drop that they did not enjoy. And not long ago, NZME, the publisher of the Herald, was trying to buy the Stuff papers and mastheads. So this is a bit of a change in fortunes. Yeah,
that's right. That was there were negotiations going on behind closed doors that all came to a halt when that whole NZME boardroom drama that we ended up talking about just about every week, prompting Hayden Donnell to create a special sting.
That's right, for it.
I remember that. Those days.
Whatever happened to that sting?
I don't know. Yeah. Best we never hear it again. It's all
went
over
out
now.
for cigarettes.
Yeah, that's right. But because of that, Stuff said, well, we're basically pulling out of the negotiations, and it's not to say it couldn't be revived at some point. But if things had gone differently, and they hadn't had that boardroom upset, who knows? Maybe a deal could have been done. But now, Stuff seemed to be gaining audience. The Herald either standing still or dropping back a little bit. And Gavin Ellis made an interesting point. He's saying, the Herald has had this process for a while now of having a homepage and the app with much more of its algorithmic sort of influence and AI-driven selection, maybe delivering you the kind of content that might interest you. Maybe that's not working. So he says it will be interesting to observe whether they reassess their news values in the face of what he describes as the challenge from the south.
So those are the two big, historical online titans. What about RNZ and TVNZ, which typically have been sort of a level below audience-wise? Do they feature as well in this data?
Yeah, well, no newspapers obviously to factor into that print and digital audience. This is just their websites. And of course, it's not really taking into account their broadcast element. And I think for TVNZ, it's just the onenews.co.nz site and not the news content that's part of TVNZ Plus. But 800,000 people engaging with that every month. RNZ, 1.7 million now. So it's getting pretty close to the Herald's, which is just a shade under 2 million per month. And also the other interesting figures in here, the Sunday papers, same thing, Sunday Star Times picking up readers. For a while it looked like, that was a really tough gig, selling a paper with a premium price, and, the digital side of that was a bit more difficult. But, that, and it's got the same editor, Tracy Watkins does the Post as the Sunday Star Times. So the Post and Sunday Star Times success. And I think just reading the actual paper product of the Star Times, that really seems to be holding its own. So I think it's all good.
How are regional papers doing?
Oh, not so well. Gavin Ellis, picked that up, and to say, a grand total of 200,000 for regional newspapers, so dropping 33,000 readers in total. That doesn't include Waikato Times, which is considered a metro paper by the end. He says, Gavin Ellis, that this is a mega trend that's hard to buck. Regional titles all around, Australia, North America, UK, Europe, are closing. So it's a difficult one. But I just wonder whether the big picture is, sure, regional news, that's hard in local papers, but whether the media is now stabilising a little bit, where people used to say, the game could be all up for the likes of publishing papers and everything's going to have to go digital. And, as we know, the ad revenue is a fraction of what you can get from old-fashioned newspaper display advertising. So they'll be fighting for digital crumbs from the tables of others. But maybe we're now heading towards a kind of stabilisation where, the audiences that are prepared to pay are doing it. The media companies have found a form that mixes, the old-fashioned printed paper and delivery of digital news with paywalls, as well as the free stuff as well for people that just won't. So they're remaining relevant, the big titles, even if it's still a difficult proposition revenue-wise, and maybe the appeal of all this other sort of stuff that competes for people's attention, like, Netflix or whatever, is plateauing as well. So possibly we're finding a kind of sustainable form and scale for the news media that supports journalism to survive.
Colin, just before we move on, and it's not on our rundown, but I've just got a text in. It would be great, and maybe you're planning on doing something on this, but this text reads, it would be great if Mediawatch could talk about the colossal success of Dish magazine and its expansion into Australia, thanks Yvonne Lorcan. And I mean, that's quite an interesting media story.
Well, I mentioned Dish just really briefly in Mediawatch
on
in
Sunday,
the weekend, just to say that their Christmas edition had boomed, because Christmas is a great time for, hopeful time for magazines to pick up subscriptions that can see them coasting through the year. But no, I wasn't aware of it. It's not much of a lifestyle, food and fashion and type reader. That sort of stuff passes me by a little bit, so I couldn't say in living memory I'd picked up a copy of Dish and looked through it. But if they're expanding, that is really impressive.
Totally bucking the trend, because that's really interesting.
I mean, other post-COVID, of course, the whole magazine thing collapsed a bit with Bauer being so dominant and just pulling the pin. All sorts of other companies like...
it's been a tough time for North and South, tough time for Metro.
Yeah, but even the lifestyle-y ones, like there was a company that set up 4, it was called Woman Magazine, and there were about 3 or 4 others, one devoted to travel and household, and so 4 brand new titles. I don't think they ended up surviving, so it's difficult. But also regionally, like local magazines seem to be booming around the country. I remember doing a media watch on, I think the Canterbury region and Christchurch had something like 5, maybe even 6 regular monthly glossy magazines all covering local stuff and lifestyle and shopping and all sorts, and having enough advertising to be viable businesses. So there's still a market for sure.
Let's talk a bit about stuff which had some good stats, but a correction last Friday, a bit of an embarrassing correction last Friday.
This is a story that they'd published earlier, which I had seen but kind of overlooked. Man who applied for almost 8,000 jobs had been in prison in the US, it said. So in October, Stuff published 3 stories about this guy, Robert Purchase, who complained that because of a conviction that was way back in 1997 when he was young, he had applied for 8,000 jobs in 2 years and not got one. And then the story came out on Friday. So we would like to clarify, he was convicted of crimes overseas after being released from jail in New Zealand, 25-year jail sentences in Florida for kidnap, carjacking with a deadly weapon, released in 2023 and returned to New Zealand. So important details, it would seem, not in the 3 stories about why he was having trouble getting a job.
Well, they fessed up to it, though.
Well, they did, but David Farrier of Webworm noted it wouldn't have been on many people's radars when they posted that on the Stuff website at just after 10 p.m. last Friday. He said 10:06 p.m. to be precise is where you post things to die. But look, it's there on the record now that there was important information wasn't in that story or the first 3 about Robert Purchase.
And you were actually impressed by some journalism from Stuff this week.
Yeah, if we're going to pick on them, or ought to be nice about it. The press series Who Owns Christchurch, really, really good. There have been 4 parts so far. I'm not sure if there are more to come, but the church holdings and property around the city, the council, the extensive council property portfolio, the commercial property titans that have their own private kind of empires, and the most recent one, the 17 landlords who own more than 1,000 Christchurch rentals. That was by Liz McDonald and Charlie Mitchell. Really, really amazing, including the profile of Liz Harris, the city's most prolific landlord with interests in 170 rentals. That's
wow.
That's quite a portfolio. And then one of them separately, with this guy Murray Hill, who's become sort of notorious. Some call him a slumlord. Nadine Roberts of Stuff back in February featured him because he had a boarding house in Littleton. He gives rentals to people who otherwise might find it difficult to find accommodation, but certainly profits from it handsomely. And just last week he was ordered to pay money after he had been ordered to fix up that derelict Littleton boarding house and didn't. Now the Ministry of Business, Innovation and Employment and the Tenancy Tribunal are trying to enforce this action. But he's been investigated and prosecuted a few times. So interesting and really good work by the press to let you know what's going on with property in the city and who owns it and how they operate.
Colin, you have some recommendations for us this Wednesday.
Yeah, I just didn't get a chance to mention it last couple of weeks, but the spin-off Juggernaut podcast, really good. And I think most of the, either 4 or 5 now up out of a 6-part series.
This is looking at the Bolger Prime Minister.
The Bolger, yep. The first Juggernaut was about the 4th Labour government. This is about the years 1990 to 1999. So through to, the Bolger, Shipley years, the mother of all budgets, all of that's in it. Also, The Hack. This is a BBC drama that's on TVNZ one in the weekends. It's also on TVNZ On Demand. That's a drama series I didn't know existed, but it's on the News International, News of the World phone hacking scandal. It's all about the Guardian journalist Nick Davis, who broke that story, who's not a very telegenic guy, and I've interviewed him a couple of times, and he's played by David Tennant.
Who is a very telegenic guy.
Yeah, and do you know there's editor Alan Rusbridger, who's kind of like Harry Potter's granddad sort of thing in real life, and he's played by the guy Toby Jones, who played the man who busted open that post office scandal. He played that guy, and his kind of squashed down face, and the very strange relationship between the two because they're very unusual characters, and I don't know how close it is to real life, but very hard thing to dramatise, and they do it really well. So that's called The Hack on TVNZ On Demand.
Great stuff. Colin Peacock, thank you very much as always, and we'll catch you at the same time next week.
Sure thing, I'll be back.